When Yulia met Victor, she was certain the universe had finally rewarded her for years of heartbreak. He was kind, attentive, and impossibly charming. Within a few weeks, they were inseparable, and within a few months, they were living together. Victor wasn't perfect. He was between jobs, relying on an elusive startup project with a mysterious partner, but his love felt so real that Yulia overlooked the red flags. They talked about marriage constantly. Rings were tried on, venues were bookmarked. But every time they planned to file for their marriage license, something came up. His car broke down, she got sick, his ex-wife called about their son. Always something. "I feel like we're cursed," Yulia said once, half joking. But the tightness in her chest when she said it wasn't funny. Victor's ex, Alina, was the unshakable shadow in their relationship. She called often, sometimes late at night, usually about their 7-year-old son, Sashko. Yulia tried to be understanding. She had no children of her own and admired Victor's dedication as a father. But when the phone rang at 2:17 a.m., and he slipped out of bed without explanation, something cracked. By sunrise, Victor hadn't returned. He showed up just before breakfast. His hair was messy, and his eyes were heavy. "Sashko had a fever," he said simply. "I had to stay." Yulia didn't question it out loud. But she noticed how quickly he grabbed his phone when it buzzed. She noticed he showered without kissing her good morning. Later that day, she went to visit Madame Grace. "You must help me," she said. "I think someone's trying to destroy us. I think it might be his ex-wife." I studied her closely. Her aura was dimmed by sorrow, but her heart still burned bright. "You live in a place where the door opens outward, yes?" I asked. Yulia blinked. "Yes, how did you? That means your luck is escaping. Everything good walks right out unless you keep it in." I gave her a ritual to perform. A simple one. But one that required courage. "Read these words at your front door. But be warned, when you do, the man you love may vanish. Because he was never truly yours to begin with." Yulia clutched the paper, eyes wide with fear. "I can't lose him," she whispered. "Then you must decide, truth or illusion. Both cannot stay." She didn't perform the ritual. She burned the paper instead. That night, Victor received a call from Alina. Yulia sat on the couch, watching him whisper into the phone, pacing the kitchen. When she walked in, he smiled too quickly. "That was Alina," he said. "Sashko's been hospitalized. I have to go." "Again," Yulia whispered. He kissed her forehead and disappeared into the night. The next morning, Yulia received a bouquet of red tulips. No note. Just her name and Victor's scroll on the delivery slip. An hour later, he called. "I told Alina I'm marrying you. She's finally letting me bring Sashko over." Relief swept over Yulia. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe this really was just about a boy and a stubborn ex. She cleaned the apartment like royalty was coming. She baked a cake. She bought a toy Sashko had once mentioned. But when Sashko arrived, he didn't smile. "I don't like it here," he said. "I don't want to come back." He didn't touch the cake. He turned down the gift. He refused to sit near Yulia. Victor tried to coax him, but the boy was firm. "Mama said you're just pretending. That you don't love me." Yulia's heart sank. After Sashko left, she waited for Victor to explain. But he just stared at the floor. "She says things to him, to turn him against me," he mumbled. And for the first time, Yulia felt it. The deep, sinking weight of doubt. That night, she followed Victor. He wasn't hard to track. He wasn't careful. He stood outside Alina's building. They kissed. Not a peck. Not a performance. A kiss. Yulia didn't cry. Not then. She waited until she was home. Then she opened the drawer where she had hidden the ritual. The edges were charred, but the words were still there. This time, she whispered every word. And when she finished, there was a knock at the door. The next few days felt like a dream and a nightmare all at once. Yulia floated through them with Victor at her side, his sweet gestures, his nightly calls, even the tiny bouquet he brought her out of nowhere. "Just because you make my day better," he'd say. And she believed him. She wanted to believe him. But Victor's phone buzzed too often. His late returns became more frequent. And that vague startup project he was working on? No updates. No progress. Just excuses. Yulia tried to be understanding. After all, he had a child from a previous marriage. He was doing his best. Or so she thought. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Victor's phone rang again. This time, he excused himself mid-chop and took the call on the balcony. When he returned, his face was tight. "Something wrong?" Yulia asked. "Sasha's not feeling well again," Victor sighed. "Olenka's asking me to bring some meds." Yulia hesitated. "Is she okay? I mean, she asks a lot lately." "She's Sasha's mother. What am I supposed to do? Not help my kid?" "I know. I worry." "I get it," Victor said, softening. "But please trust me. It's about Sasha, not her." The words were kind, but Yulia's heart churned. She didn't want to seem insecure or controlling, but the line between co-parenting and codependence was blurring. That night, Victor didn't come home. Yulia waited, her phone clutched tightly. His didn't ring. No messages. No updates. She finally drifted into a restless sleep. By morning, he walked through the door with a coffee in hand like nothing had happened. "Sorry, I crashed on the couch over there," he said casually. Sasha had a rough night. Yulia's patience thinned. She remembered what the blind seer, Madame Grace, had told her. If she performed the door ritual, her happiness would return. But she hadn't done it. She hadn't wanted to risk losing Victor. Not yet. Still, the doubts were multiplying. Later that week, Yulia stood by the door, herbs in hand. She whispered the charm Madame Grace had taught her. "Let all my good remain, all falsehood flee this threshold. What is mine, may it stay." She felt foolish. Until the doorbell rang. It was a delivery. A gorgeous bouquet of her favorite wildflowers. A card read, "Thank you for being my light, V." She smiled. Maybe she was just overthinking everything. But the illusion shattered that afternoon. While grabbing groceries, she spotted Victor across the street, with Olenka. They weren't arguing. They weren't even tense. They were laughing. And then she saw it. He leaned in and kissed her cheek. Too softly. Too tenderly. Yulia turned away before they could spot her, her heart racing. That night, Victor came home with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. "For us," he said brightly. "Let's have a chill night." She could barely eat. When he stepped out to shower, she checked his phone. No passcode. No messages from Olenka either. Clean. Too clean. "Everything okay?" he asked later, drying his hair. Yulia nodded slowly. The next day, she went to visit Madame Grace again. "I performed the ritual," Yulia confessed. "And now I feel like I'm seeing things more clearly. But they hurt." "You still have doubts," the old woman nodded. "Bring me something that belongs to him. A shirt, a watch, anything close to his heart. Only then will you see the full truth." Yulia left feeling more confused than ever. Victor still said the right things. Still held her like she was his world. But if he wasn't hiding anything, why did it all feel like a lie? She returned home and stared at the mug he always used. The one that said "Best Dad Ever," a gift from Sasha. It had once melted her heart. Now it made her ache. She packed it gently in her bag. "I'll bring it to her tomorrow," she whispered to herself. But before that, she would watch. And listen. Because one way or another, the truth was about to surface. The next morning, Yulia could barely eat. Her stomach twisted with unease, a dull ache of questions left unanswered. Victor had left before she woke up, the only evidence of his presence a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen table. Had to run early. Talk later. V. No kisses. No hearts. Not even a smiley face. She stared at the note, then at the chipped coffee mug he always used, left unwashed in the sink. It felt like a metaphor now. Familiar, imperfect, and carelessly abandoned. That afternoon, Yulia returned to Madame Grace's home with that very mug carefully wrapped in a silk scarf. She handed it over without saying a word. Madame Grace touched the porcelain gently, closing her eyes. This man has real feelings for you, but he's not walking his path alone. There's another woman, not his ex-wife. Someone else is casting shadows over your relationship. Another woman? Yulia whispered, her mouth suddenly dry. She's not a romantic partner. Not exactly. But she holds power over him. Emotional, financial, and something deeper, ambition. His business partner? Yes. Tamara. She manipulates him, feeds his ego, fuels his insecurities. The idea he's building his future on? It started with her. Yulia's heart sank. But he told me it was his. Half-truths are dangerous. He's being led by promises, and that woman doesn't want to let go. Tears pricked Yulia's eyes. So he's not cheating physically, but he's not being honest either. Exactly. And that can destroy a relationship just the same. That night, Yulia couldn't hold it in anymore. Victor, she said at dinner, who really owns your app idea? He paused mid-bite. Why are you asking me that? Because I want to understand. I want to support you, but only if I know the truth. He sighed. It was her concept originally. Tamara's. But I developed most of the back end. I've been pushing it forward. Are you two involved in any other way? No. I swear. She's just intense, controlling. And yes, sometimes I feel like I owe her too much. What about me? Yulia asked, eyes glassy. What do you owe me? I owe you everything. I owe you the truth. I haven't always been good at that, but I never stopped loving you. Yulia wanted to believe him, but a shadow still loomed over her heart. The next morning, she called Tamara. Hello, Tamara. This is Yulia, Victor's fiancée. A pause. Oh. I didn't realize you two were still together. We are. And I'd like to understand the nature of your relationship with Victor. Tamara laughed softly. That's a question for him, not me. I'm asking you. There was a beat of silence. Then Tamara said, let's just say Victor helps me stay funded, and I help him stay relevant. He needs me more than he admits. That's why he won't let go. Yulia hung up, hands trembling. She felt the truth settle like a stone in her chest. Victor may have loved her, but he was emotionally tethered to a woman who saw him as a tool. She spent the rest of the day in a daze. At sunset, she walked aimlessly through a nearby park, the world buzzing past her like she was underwater. How could love feel so tangled? When she got home, Victor was waiting. I saw you left early, he said, trying to smile. Are you okay? I talked to Tamara, Yulia replied quietly. His smile faded. You what? She said you need her more than you admit. That she's the real force behind your work. That's not true, Victor said, but he didn't sound certain. Do you even know who you are without her? I'm trying to figure that out, he confessed. With you. I want to build a future together. But how can I build with someone who doesn't know who he is? They sat in silence. Yulia's heart ached with love and fear. Then maybe we need space, she whispered. I'll walk away from it all, he said suddenly. The app. The partnership. If it means I can keep you. Yulia looked at him for a long moment. Don't walk away for me. Do it for yourself. Then come back when you're whole. That night, Victor packed his things and left. Not out of anger, but out of understanding. He needed to reclaim himself before he could truly belong to anyone else. And Yulia, heartbroken but clear, knew this was the only way they stood a chance. Yulia spent the following days grappling with a silence that echoed far louder than any argument. The apartment, once a place of laughter and shared dreams, now felt like a shell of what it used to be. She kept her phone nearby but stopped checking it every 10 minutes. Instead, she returned to some of her old comforts: long walks, journaling by candlelight, and cups of herbal tea she once shared with her grandmother. But Victor still lingered in her thoughts. Not just his absence, but the unraveling mystery behind his vanishing. She couldn't stop wondering, was it all truly about his son? Or was there something darker, something she hadn't uncovered yet? Her answer came unexpectedly in a dream. That night, she saw herself in a room of mirrors, surrounded by faces she knew. One by one, the reflections shattered, until only one remained: Tamara. She woke up gasping, her heart racing. Could it really be her? Tamara, her former colleague and friend? The next morning, Yulia scrolled through her phone absently, then froze. A tagged photo in a mutual friend's post stopped her cold. There was Victor, seated comfortably at an intimate cafe table. And next to him, laughing and leaning into his shoulder, Tamara. Everything inside her went still. She remembered how Tamara had joked once, "If you ever let that man go, I'm next in line." How she had slyly asked too many questions about Victor. How she had seemed to disappear right when things between Yulia and Victor became serious. Yulia could no longer ignore what was happening. Later that day, she called Sergei, the one friend who had stood by her when everything fell apart. "Tamara," she said plainly. "Did you know?" Sergei was quiet, then sighed. "I thought you did." "Did what?" "She was sniffing around Victor before you two even hit your rough patch. I figured you were open with her. I didn't want to stir drama." It wasn't drama anymore. It was betrayal. Deep and layered. Yulia ended the call, pulled out the small linen pouch Madame Grace had given her, and set it on the kitchen table. This time, she wouldn't hesitate. If Tamara had cast a shadow over her relationship, it was time to clear it once and for all. That evening, with the full moon shining through her window, Yulia stood barefoot at her doorway. She sprinkled the dried herbs in a wide arc and recited the incantation. "All that is false must go. All that is mine, return." Just as the final syllable left her lips, a knock rattled the door. Victor. He looked tired, older somehow. His eyes were rimmed red. "Can we talk?" he asked. Yulia let him in, but her heart remained guarded. They sat opposite each other on the couch, two people who had once been everything to each other, now strangers sharing air. "I messed up," Victor began. "Tamara. It started as nothing. Then it became too easy. She offered comfort when everything with us got hard. But I never loved her. Not even close." Yulia listened, but her face was unreadable. "You say that now," she said. "But how do I believe it? You told me you loved me, then left when things got hard." He leaned forward. "I panicked. I thought I lost you. And I didn't know how to fix it. I thought maybe if I disappeared, things would reset. But they didn't. They got worse." "I saw your messages," she replied. "The dinners. The lies. I know. And I don't expect forgiveness. But I want to be honest now. I want to earn your trust again. I miss us. I miss you." She stood slowly. "I performed a ritual tonight," she said. "To return what's mine, and banish what isn't." Victor's eyes searched hers. "What does that mean for me?" "I don't know yet." He nodded. "If you ever decide, I'll be here." He left without another word. The door closed behind him, not with the finality of goodbye, but with the hesitancy of a maybe. Yulia walked to the window and looked out at the moonlight spilling across the city. She didn't know what would come next, but for the first time in weeks, she felt clarity. That night, she slept soundly. Days turned into weeks. The silence between Yulia and Victor remained, broken only by the occasional message, a forwarded article, a meme he knew she'd laugh at, a simple "hope you're okay." He didn't push. And she didn't reply. Yulia focused on herself, on rebuilding what had cracked inside her. She returned to work with renewed energy, took yoga classes again, even signed up for a weekend retreat. But no matter how much she busied herself, a part of her still ached. Not for Victor, but for the belief that love could be simple, honest, and lasting. And then one rainy Thursday, a knock on the door shattered the calm. It wasn't Victor. It was Tamara. "Can we talk?" she asked, soaked from the rain, mascara smudged. Yulia stepped aside. Not because she had forgiven her, but because she deserved answers. "I don't know how to start," Tamara muttered, clutching her purse tightly. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't even plan it." "Then how did it?" Yulia asked, her voice steady. Tamara took a deep breath. "I saw your happiness. And I wanted it. I wanted someone to care for me like Victor cared for you. I never had that. Not once. That's not an excuse. No. It's not. I flirted. He flirted back. It spiraled." Yulia clenched her fists. "You watched me cry over him. You held my hand while I told you I thought he was pulling away. And all along, you were behind it." "I know," Tamara whispered. "And I hate myself for it. You have no idea how much." Yulia studied her for a long moment. Then calmly she said, "There's a reason I performed a ritual to banish what doesn't belong in my life." Tamara's eyes widened. "Yes," Yulia continued. "I went to someone. A seer. She told me someone I knew wanted to steal my happiness. I thought it was Victor's ex. I never imagined it was you." Tamara's expression cracked. "Please believe me. I never meant to take him from you. I thought maybe he'd fall for me. But he never really did. He left me 2 days ago." Yulia didn't flinch. "You think that's supposed to make me feel better?" "No. I just needed to say it out loud." "Then say this too," Yulia said, standing taller. "Say you're sorry. Not because you lost, but because you betrayed someone who trusted you." Tamara's lip trembled. "I'm sorry, Yulia. Truly. I was selfish and cruel. And you can go now," Yulia said, stepping aside and holding the door open. Tamara nodded, her face pale. She left without another word. Yulia closed the door, locked it, and walked straight to the mirror. She looked at herself for a long time. That night, she didn't cry. Instead, she packed a small suitcase and headed to Madame Grace. The old woman opened the door before Yulia could even knock. "Come in, child. I knew you'd return." "I need closure," Yulia said. "Not about Victor. About myself." Madame Grace smiled. "Then you're ready." She motioned for Yulia to sit by the fire. "You gave too much of your light to someone who didn't know how to protect it. That's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to take it back." Yulia nodded slowly. "How?" "Burn the memory. Not him, not her, the memory. The future you imagined. The wedding. The children. Burn it. So you can write a new one." She handed Yulia a small slip of parchment and a pen. Yulia wrote. Not a letter to Victor. Not to Tamara. She wrote to herself. "I let you dream with a full heart. And I'm sorry it broke. But we're not done. Love isn't over. You just know more now." She rolled up the paper, tied it with string, and threw it into the fire. It curled, blackened, and vanished. That night, she walked out of Madame Grace's home lighter than she had in months. And 3 days later, as she stood outside her apartment sipping coffee, a man approached her. Not Victor. A stranger. He dropped his bag, spilling papers everywhere. She helped him gather them. "Thank you," he said with a nervous smile. "I'm Mark." "Yulia." They shook hands. And maybe it was nothing. Or maybe it was the beginning of a new story. But this time, Yulia knew. Her heart wouldn't be given lightly. But when she gave it again, it would be to someone who earned every beat.